This is Paul Glumaz, and today is the 20. Let me see, what time is it? 24th of October, and we're coming into the most important decisive election process in world history. Everything depends on it. Every part of the world is going to be affected by it. Every part of the world is involved in it. And this is being brought to you by General Welfare Presents. And so in this episode, I'm going to deal with something that describes a revolutionary process involving the collapse of the credibility of the most powerful institution that emerged from World War II in the United States, which is the media, the mainstream media. I like to call it the corporate ministry of truth. That's the term I like to use, because so we're going to look at this progression or regression of the collapse of the credibility, and the collapse of the credibility of this most important institution is indispensable to a revolution. You can't really have a revolution if the media loses, it has credibility. Okay. Now, because they represent the policies that have been in place increasingly since the end of World War II. So, I call this episode the collapse of Big Brother. Now, coming out of World War II, and you had the McCarthy period and the Cold War, their corporate media emerged as a monolithic power. You had the main, and television was coming on. So you had the news being presented by television. You also had radio. But television became a very big part of the power, because everybody would sit at 6 o'clock or whenever and get the news, and CBS, NBC, ABC, etc. And then the print media, you had Newsweek, Time, Life. Newsweek was a combination of the Washington Post and the New York Times, and it was very sophisticated because everything was presented as if it were objective. And so the power of that media was the power of objectivity. Not that it was actually objective, but it was presented as objective truth or objective reality. And so, and what would happen is you would get the news. That's it. And it was the manipulation was in the form of omissions, number one, and secondarily was in the form of no analysis of what is behind the news. So essentially, those people getting the news are in a situation where there's not a discussion of an analysis of why. And so most people whose ordinary lives weren't oriented towards trying to figure out for themselves everything that's going on in the world, this is what they had to accept. Now, this monopoly was huge. And when it was decided by the British Crown and their toadies in the U.S. and in the international arena to assassinate the President of the United States, the Warren Commission report, summary findings, not the entirety, but the summary findings, were preposterously impossible from a scientific forensic thing. Anybody with a background in handling munitions or handling guns and rifles and military background would know from reading the the summary findings of the Warren Commission report that it was wrong, that it was not possible forensically. But anyone who would point to that at that time was labeled a conspiracy theorist, and that stuck. And the important point about this is that you started to have this, I mean, it began probably earlier, but you started to have this idea that if you did not agree with the so-called news and you had your own interpretations, there was something off about you, or you were a conspiracy theorist, or you were odd. So the whole objectivity of the media goes along with a certain conformity and social conformity, because if you're saying something different than what the media is saying, then who are you to be saying that, and where, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this objectivity function as also as a form of social control. And the best way to summarize the omission aspect can be said in the form of Bertrand Russell's famous philosophical problem. If a tree falls in the forest and there's no observer, then the tree did not fall in the forest. That's objective media. This is what we say is. Everything else we didn't see, and it doesn't exist. So there's a layer of people who didn't go along, but they were marginalized and isolated socially, and especially in the areas of the vast areas of the population. Now, so what is not a conspiracy theory in their idea, in the idea as presented, and also in the history departments and the political science departments and so forth, is this idea that if you try to put together a causal relationship between worldview, policies, and outcomes of intentions, as soon as you start talking about the intentions of policy intentions and the long-term intentions and the short-term intentions, no, you've gone off the rails. The way it's presented is there's a sum total of interactions of individuals that lead to a cause of why things are happening. Okay. And this mentality persisted in that period. Now, this worked for a while, but as things started to happen and a lot of people began to have problems with that. The nation, as long as the nation was doing okay, but then you had the Vietnam War, which again, this played a very key role in getting. And then you had the whole period going into the 70s, late 70s, early 80s. Now, in that period, the movement that I'm a part of, the LaRouche movement, played a major role because there was no force spreading a different policy, a different ideas, a different conception of causality in the population. So between 1975 to 74 to 1987, when the government seized the publications, 13 years of incredible activity in the streets, in the pores of society, presenting a causal view, an alternative view, exposing the British Empire, exposing the intentions of the elites, the policymakers, and so on and so forth, promoting policies and everything. And this has had a huge impact The New Solidarity had hundreds of thousands of subscribers twice a week. Fusion Magazine had hundreds of thousands of subscribers. There were presidential campaigns every 4 years, where in 80 and 84, Lyndon LaRouche was on national television for half-hour spots. He invented the half-hour spot. And this was having a big impact. And what it was undermining the narrative of the media on everything. And even more so was the Executive Intelligence Review, which was coming out since 74. This became the alternative to the media for the diplomatic corps, for business people, but primarily for the entire world's diplomatic corps. They would compare the Executive Intelligence Review with what they were getting from the New York Times, or what they were getting from the British press, or what have you. And this had a huge impact internationally. And the Executive Intelligence Review became very dominant in many ways. So as things got worse, as you went into this situation of an attempted police state around 9/11, and the Patriot Act, and the surveillance state, where essentially increasing numbers of people, especially in the 90s, began to lose any kind of credibility. The media began to lose any kind of credibility. Then you had something else begin to emerge. Psychological warfare against the population, not so much to be objective, but to cause people to doubt their own independent powers of judgment. And the way this worked is, the way this worked was, you had massive disinformation now going out into the population in many different ways, and you had essentially a shift in the way the news is covered. It's no longer being covered as news, increasingly, but as how you're supposed to react to it, or emotion, or feelings. So no longer is the news about the news, it's about how you're supposed to feel. So you have an incident, and then you're supposed to react to the incident. So what you have is an increasing shift towards that kind of coverage of the news. So and so did so and so, and isn't that bad? It's not the news anymore. It's, Rush. This is bad. That's bad, and so on and so forth. And you're supposed to have you're being manipulated into feeling states rather than just say, okay, that's the news. So that becomes very big. At the same time that you're drowning people increasingly in the feeling states, you're also running psychological operations. And this really became huge under Obama. Because what happened under Obama is you had the quintessential cognitive dissonance situation where Obama was presented as one thing, but he did the exact opposite. Right? Everything that he did was opposite of what he was presented as. A progressive, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And yet he was a hardcore, stone cold killer. And what happened is that the people who got sucked into that got shredded, because they had to go against the media perception that's created around Obama when they knew the actual reality was different. And this has happened to the Democratic Party. It happened to the Black Congressional Caucus. It happened to the African American community. They got shredded between the so-called media presentation of Obama and their experience with Obama. So what Lyndon LaRouche did was to have all the teams going out in the streets with the tables and everything, put a mustache on Obama. And that went on for 8 years, or 7.5 years. And that had a huge impact because it presented the reality against the controlled perception. Okay, so in this period of cognitive dissonance, you come to the end of Obama's 8 years, and now you have something spectacular occur, which is the unexpected election of Donald Trump. Now, how did Donald Trump get elected? Because the collapse of credibility of the media and the conditioning of all the politicians to respond to their issues and their control, which essentially formed them into these kind of people competing for electoral positions and obeying all of the boundaries, so to speak. And he rejected all of that in that Republican primary process. But the groundwork for that had been laid by a whole process which began in 74, 75 and accelerated between 2009 and 2016. So this had a huge impact. So now the media went into the third development. The first is objectivity. The second is cognitive dissonance. But now they went into something called the resist mode. So instead of just doing cognitive dissonance or objectivity, they now became totally oriented towards a resist against the president of the United States, a resist against Trump. And everything got reorganized from that standpoint. Everything. You know, like today, if he says we got to have a vaccine and there's incredible developments around the vaccine, okay, no, you can't do that. Because if it's true and the vaccine is good and Trump is partly responsible for that, oh my God, we can't do that. Everything out there is now totally vectored in that way. They're saying he caused the deaths of 200,000 people personally. The coronavirus didn't cause the death. Donald Trump caused the death. What does that mean? That means it's gone totally into the resist mode. Okay? Now, we have last week, we have the Hunter Biden situation with the hard drive and what's on the hard drive. And the New York Post printed this article. And when people tried to send it to put it out on Facebook and Twitter, it got blocked. The two largest platforms that people use to communicate, it got blocked. So now we're going into the next fourth phase of the media's collapse, which is public open censorship. We are censoring this, and there's nothing you can do about it. Who are you? Well, we're the corporate ministry of truth. We're all of the internet firms, you know, and we are the mainstream media. We are the corporate ministry of truth, and we are not going to go along, and we're now censoring. So this is huge. This is the prelude to any revolution. The prelude to any revolution is the collapse of the credibility of the news that you're getting. It's totally disintegrating before your eyes. And if a mass of people who have rejected this media come out and vote for Donald Trump, and Donald Trump wins the election, then I have no idea what the next fifth phase of the media is going to be. But what I recommend at that point is that people just boycott the advertisers of all of these, entities. But that's me. And just just crush them. So that's where we are. This is an important part of the revolutionary process that we're in. Donald Trump has, tens of thousands of people in his rallies. He's going to have 6 rallies. He's having 4 rallies today, which is Saturday. He's having 6 rallies one of the days during the week. He's escalating like crazy. And so this is a very important component. This process that begins in 74, 75, the long-term process of challenging the credibility of the media is like the first step in developing in the population. Now, the COVID-19 virus has had a very negative effect on all of this because the way that it works is it works with people having conversations with each other. People sitting in bars, people sitting in restaurants, people sitting at homes, relatives coming over, and all of this stuff. And you have conversations. You analyze what's being said. And that's where the ideas come from to understand where things break down, where it's a lie, what must be going on. Because it's human nature to want to understand. That's the whole point. It's human nature to want to understand. And when people give up trying to understand, then that's the end. They're not, they're subjects. They're peasants. They've been crushed. And that's what they've been trying to do. And let's make sure that that doesn't happen. So until next time, this is Paul Glumaz, and this is being brought to you by General Welfare Presents.